2 Subarus, 1 clipboard, and a drone showed up at my cattle gate at 7:03 in the morning. The drone dipped like a nosy hummingbird over my barn, its camera lens pointed directly at my property. A woman in pristine business casual stepped out of the first vehicle and announced through my fence with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. "Sir, you're in violation of the stucco color palette requirements." I stood there in rubber boots and a bathrobe, holding my 12-gauge shotgun like it was a broom, barrel pointed safely at the ground, safety engaged, and a bright orange chamber flag dangling from the breech to show it was completely unloaded. The agents looked at that flag, then at my large metal sign that read "No Trespass/Working Ranch," and both of them burst into synchronized tears. Somewhere behind me, one of my cows let out a loud sneeze. I leaned casually against the fence post and asked in my most neighborly voice, "Y'all lost, or just feeling brave before you've had your coffee?" My name is Nolan Price. I'm what you'd call a quiet rancher. I like my coffee at sunrise, my diesel truck playlist, and I don't bother a single soul. My 60-acre place backs right up to a neighborhood called Juniper Hollow, which is one of those HOA communities where the fences are more like metaphors and the dogs are treated like decorative accessories. Their president is a woman named Beatatrice Crowell. Picture a helmet-shaped bob haircut, pearl necklaces at 7 in the morning, and the spiritual energy of a parking boot clamped onto your tire. Beatrice had decided that my windmill was what she called a visual disruption, my barn was non-compliant with standards I never agreed to, and my refusal to sell my land for her planned wellness enclave was, in her exact words, contrary to community vision. Here's the thing, though. I do not live in Juniper Hollow. I don't live under their rules, their covenants, or their ridiculous restrictions. My land is older than their bylaws. My property deed is older than Beatrice's highlighted hair extensions. This ranch has been in my family for 3 generations, and I'll be damned if some suburban tyrant with a laminated rulebook thinks she can change that. It started with letters. Polite at first, then increasingly aggressive. Then came the courtesy visits, which weren't courteous at all. One morning I woke up to find that a landscaper I absolutely did not hire had trimmed my cottonwood trees for my side of the fence, and then had the audacity to mail me an invoice for $350. Beatrice started sending what she called agents of compliance to my front gate. These people would show up with laminated checklists, asking questions about approved exterior materials and something called livestock curfews, as if my cows needed a bedtime. One afternoon I caught a man in a polo shirt and khakis standing in my pasture with a laser measuring tape, counting my cattle like they were parking spaces in a shopping mall lot. When I asked him what the hell he thought he was doing, he stammered something about a property assessment and practically ran back to his car. That's when the rumors started spreading on the HOA online forum. Suddenly I was running an unlicensed shooting range. My cows were being described as feral. My pond was labeled an attractive nuisance that posed a danger to the community. Someone even airdropped a PDF document to my phone titled "Mandatory Offer. We'll take 20 acres for the pool." It read like a ransom note written in pastel fonts and corporate speak. Then Beatrice decided to escalate things to a whole new level. She filed what she called a nuisance abatement petition with the county, claiming that my ranch fell within the HOA's sphere of influence. She attached a forged addendum to the petition that supposedly showed I had agreed to adopt their community rules in exchange for what she called neighborly harmony. The document was completely fabricated. She also included grainy photos that allegedly showed reckless discharge of firearms on my property. I recognized those images immediately because they were screenshots from a YouTube skeet shooting tutorial filmed in another state entirely. Beatrice wasn't done. She scheduled what she called a site inspection, complete with 2 compliance agents and that drone I mentioned earlier. She also tipped off animal control, filing a complaint about unsafe livestock husbandry practices. She wanted to paint me as some kind of reckless, dangerous neighbor who posed a threat to her pristine little community. That morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called the sheriff's department and let them know what was about to happen. I printed out copies of my agricultural exemption paperwork, my property deed, and every relevant county ordinance that protected my rights as a rancher. Then I hung fresh "No Trespass" signs on every section of my fence line, positioned where even a drone camera could read them clearly. I also set up my GoPro camera on the gate post, angled to capture everything. When those 2 Subarus rolled up with Beatrice's agents and that drone operator, I stepped out of my house wearing my work clothes and carrying my shotgun. The chamber was empty, the safety was on, and that bright orange chamber flag was visible from 50 feet away. Anyone with even basic firearm knowledge would know that flag meant the gun was completely cleared and safe. I walked calmly to my side of the fence, kept the barrel pointed at the ground, and told those agents in a clear, steady voice to step back from my property line and wait for law enforcement to arrive. The deputies showed up within 15 minutes. They reviewed the GoPro footage right there at the gate, looked over all my paperwork with approving nods, and then asked Beatrice's agents for their documentation and authorization. The drone operator, it turned out, had no FAA authorization for low-altitude overflight of private property. The compliance agents had no legal warrant or right to enter my land. Beatrice's nuisance petition hadn't actually been filed with any legitimate county office. The deputies issued written warnings to the agents, documented the attempted trespass, and called animal control to cancel the bogus complaint. Then things got even better. The county attorney's office sent an investigator to request all HOA communications that referenced my property. Beatrice, in her infinite wisdom, kept sending emails anyway. The subject lines read like villain monologues. Escalation strategy, dust and pressure. Legal pressure points for compliance. Coordinated community action against non-conforming property. Every single email she sent became part of a neat little package of documented harassment evidence. Court day arrived, and I filed for a restraining injunction, civil harassment damages, and compensation for crop disturbance and fence repairs caused by their repeated trespassing. The county district attorney added criminal charges against Beatrice for filing a false instrument and unlawful surveillance. We played that gate camera footage in the courtroom. You could see the agents stepping onto my side of the property line, the drone swooping low over my barn and livestock areas, and my calm voice telling them to back up and wait for the deputies. That bright orange chamber flag waved in the breeze like a safety pennant. When Beatrice took the witness stand, she declared with absolute certainty that my ranch was incompatible with the Juniper Hollow aesthetic and that property values were suffering because of my refusal to cooperate. The judge, who I later learned had grown up on a ranch himself and still wore boots under his robe, asked her a simple question. He wanted her to point to any law, statute, or regulation that made aesthetic preferences more important than a legally recorded property deed. She couldn't answer. Her lawyer tried to redirect, but the damage was done. The judge granted my injunction immediately. He levied fines against the HOA totaling $18,000. The drone was seized as evidence. Beatrice and the entire HOA board were barred from contacting me, flying anything over my property, or representing my land in any sales materials or development plans. The Wellness Enclave developer, who had been lurking in the background of this whole scheme, quietly disappeared and pulled out of the deal entirely. The consequences came down like a hammer. Beatrice was removed from the HOA presidency by an emergency vote. She was sentenced to 240 hours of community service, which the judge specifically ordered to be served at the county fairgrounds, mucking out horse stalls under a wooden sign that read authentic agricultural aesthetic. The HOA's insurance company denied coverage for her actions, ruling them as intentional acts outside the scope of their policy. That left the entire Juniper Hollow community on the hook for the legal fees and fines through a special assessment that cost each household over $800. When the judge read the sentence, Beatrice's face went from confident smirk to pale shock in about 3 seconds flat. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder as she sat there, stunned, realizing that her little power trip had just cost her everything.